Sassafras tree, one of the very first plants, wild plants, that I learned to identify as a kid. The best time to harvest it traditionally is in the spring, but you can harvest it any time. I found that in the summer, or after the leaves open on the bud, it tends to get a little more bitter, less zingy. This is what they used to make root beer from, sassafras. I'm going to show you how to identify it because you are pulling it before the leaves. One of the best ways to know that you have it specifically is to break a twig and smell it. And you can smell that zesty, aromatic root beer type odor. Now, the bigger tree, you're not going to harvest. This is about as big as I harvest it, and if you try to harvest it any bigger than that by pulling them up, which is what I do, it breaks off where the runner is off of the parent tree, and so you only end up with about 6 to 8 inches worth of root. And the root also is a diameter almost too big to use. I like to cut my roots up into chunks, dry it, and then make my tea from that, rather than the bigger roots from the bigger trees, which you would have to whittle the bark off of. So we're in the second week of March here. I'm in northern Indiana, and the buds have not started on these yet. Now, the best way to spot sassafras once you know where a mother tree is to look around for green, really bright green. And you'll notice that there are really only 2 woody plants this time of year, at least in southern Michigan and northern Indiana, that have this bright green on the twig. Bright green, beautiful green that is. That would be multiflora rose, which of course has thorns, and sassafras. Then again, all you got to do is break the twig and smell it, and you know immediately that you have it. I like to pull smaller saplings that are just a little bit bigger around than a pencil. Now, if you notice, that sassafras root is much bigger because it went down to the parent root. It's much bigger than the one that I just pulled, and the diameter of course is greater on this one, and I got less root. So these small little saplings, just pulling them up is actually better. You're going to get more yield, more bang for your buck. It's easier to pull up. You don't disrupt the earth so much. You don't dislodge raspberries and other things that are coming up just by pulling up these little saplings. So I would use the saplings. Now I'm going to cut this right here. I'm going to wash it, and then I'm going to cut this with pruning shears into small, what we would cut celery or carrots into, and throw it in the dehydrator, and then I'm going to make tea, and I'm going to show you all of that on this video. But I did want to talk about why the FDA banned sassafras in the use for root beer. I'm going to tell you why they say they banned it, and then let you figure out why they really banned it. So safrole is the chemical that is found in sassafras, also found in a species of sarsaparilla, and that is what the Food and Drug Administration banned because it's listed as a carcinogenic. And in the testing that was done, they gave safrole to rats, and it caused liver cancer, I do believe. Anyway, safrole is unsoluble. You can do the research yourself, and I do promote that. I want everyone to do their own research, but safrole is not water soluble. So in order to extract this, water wouldn't be the way we do it. You're going to boil this, or you're going to use it in a sun tea, and as long as you do not ingest this, because it's not water soluble, you're really not going to get any high amount of safrole at all. Also, if you're scared of safrole, please stop eating pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, and anise. because there is safrole in all of those items, and we eat those versus not eating sassafras. We only drink the flavor from the root. So do your research on that, and if you can prove me wrong, please do, because I use this, have been using it since I was a kid, and I hope to always continue to use sassafras in the summer. It has some wonderful, wonderful benefits. It helps regulate your body temperature in the summer. So if it's a hot day and you've drank sassafras tea, it helps your body regulate that heat and your body isn't overexerting itself. So it's really good for you in the summer, thins your blood. There are some other medicinal values of sassafras, but again, I encourage you to do your own research. And what I'm teaching you here is to make the tea from what used to be our root beer, and all of the ways by which I process it, dry it, and make my sun tea and or boiling tea. Really green, really easy to identify because there's really only two small woody plants. You're looking for the sapling because that's what you're going to harvest. It just sticks out like a sore thumb. And that would be multiflora rose, and this one, of course, rose has thorns and doesn't have that aromatic smell. And there's other saplings. Notice it has an orange hue to it, and then the tips, of course, are green. So on your larger saplings, you'll have this mottled orange green color. Makes it stand out, or at least in my mind, it really makes it stand out. And then the trees, the larger trees are always very geometrically twisted and just all kinds of odd shapes. Kind of a neat tree to look at. Some people call it trashy, but I don't. Anyway, let's go to the kitchen and I will show you how to chop this up, wash it, chop it up, dry it, and I will show you how to make tea from the dried root. This right here is the sassafras that we harvested. I recommend getting a bucket and taking a garden hose and just filling it with water, and then taking your roots and sloshing them into buckets so that all the sand and the dirt, the greater majority of it, ends up in the bottom of that bucket. Then you can bring them inside with a strainer and you can finish washing them off. And then I cut them into small parts and put them in the dehydrator. And the reason I like the dehydrator versus just letting them air dry is the dehydrator gets them perfectly dry so that I can store it in jars without ever having to worry about it molding. So I can put it in a jar and store it anywhere in the cabinet out of the sunlight. It's good to go. Once it's dry, you can use it. You can use it before it's dry, but I promise you it's going to be a little more bitter and you really like it. And as far as proportion goes, I usually use 1.5 quarts of water because it's going to simmer down to 1 quart. 1.5 quarts of water for 1/4 cup of small rootstock. Now if you peel the bark, which a lot of people do on the larger roots, peel the bark and dehydrate that, then you're going to want to go to like a tablespoon. But it's not like it's going to make you sick or anything like that if you use too much. What's going to happen is it's going to get stronger, and you're going to make it to taste anyway, and you're going to find what you like, how much water versus how much sassafras. And I never really brought this to a boil. I usually don't. A lot of times I just take a coffee filter and tie it with some dental floss and throw it in a glass jar and set it out in the sun and make sun tea. And then of course you sweeten to taste too. I use honey, I don't use sugar. But this simmered for about 30 minutes, and by simmer I mean it never came to a rolling boil. And this is a pretty strong batch. You can see when I get this poured in that I used 1/2 cup instead of 1/4 cup. I just pour it through cheesecloth, and then I'll sweeten that to taste. I'm going to add water to that because it's going to be pretty strong. When I add water to it, this is going to turn like this beautiful red. Right now you can hardly see through it. It's a little cloudy, but I'll probably filter it one more time. The house smells wonderful. Smells like sassafras. Always does when you cook it. Again, I dehydrate it so I can store it, and it makes better tea if it's been dried, whether it's air dried or dried in the dehydrator. For some reason, it's bitter when you do it green. But anyway, sassafras, get out there, get you some, do some research on it. I think you'll really find that it's a great summer tea, and it really helps your body in the weather when you're working in the garden, when you're hiking, whatever. Safe and happy foraging.